Hi everyone, it's Lyra. Oh my gosh, I don't even want to tell you how much weird computer stuff I've had to get through to make this video, but I think it's finally gonna work, so I'm gonna bang it out for you. Bam, here we go. Legally Lyra, episode 7. Why biologically male and female are irrelevant social constructs, not actually scientific, and ultimately pretty silly. And transphobic. Right. So, let's start with the basics. What is a social construct? Well, a social construct is any idea that we use in our day-to-day lives that can't really be based on anything concrete. It's sort of connected to something concrete maybe, but ultimately it's kind of arbitrary in terms of how we break it down or why we even have it. Race is a really good example. While it's true that there is a group of people who have skin of a certain shade and another group of people who have skin of a certain shade and various different other shades in various different ways in between, the fact that as a society we've grouped those people into different categories called races is a social construct. That's something we decided to do. It did not have to happen. It was something we chose as a society to do. And like many social constructs, it had a lot of problems, obviously, because now there's racism. And we sort of have to deal with it because even though race is a social construct, it's something that we take seriously. And it's there and it has historicity. So social constructs are real. They're valid in the sense that we have created them, but we have to understand that we've created them and we have to take ownership for them, and we can change what they mean. We have the power to do that. They don't have some kind of absolute scientific definitive existence. Like, for example, it is absolutely the case that there is a force that attracts masses to each other. It's a social construct that we call that force gravity, and that we have all kinds of other ideas and concepts and tropes that are attached to the idea of gravity. Those are all social constructs. And a lot of what you get from science ends up being a social construct. Perfect example, biologically male and biologically female as the two categories of biological sex. Biological sex is a social construct, just like race. It's true that there are different kinds of people that have different kinds of characteristics. And it's also true that these different kinds of people are capable of doing different things in some respects. The only one that really matters being that there's one group of people who can impregnate and another group of people who can become pregnant. There are these two groups of people. But we decided to call those groups biologically male and biologically female, and to attach all of these other meanings to those groups. We historically decided somewhere along the line that biologically male is a category that should have certain characteristics which we call being a man, and vice versa for biologically female. And the thing about that is that was all arbitrary, and it was all decided by social convention, and none of those characteristics are actually determined by the fact that one group can impregnate another group. Not necessarily. It doesn't evolve out of that completely naturally without any human intervention. And so what you have to begin to understand is that this idea of biological sex is actually really arbitrary. Yes, there are different groups, but why does it matter? The only way it still has any relevance to our contemporary discussion is if you're talking about actual reproduction. And I think that as we get further and further into our society, less and less and less of what makes a person a man or a woman or anything else has to do with their role in reproduction. I mean, take gay men, for example. They're not getting any women pregnant. I mean, not through intercourse anyway. They might get a surrogate pregnant, but a lot of them don't get anyone pregnant. They just adopt, and they're still men. Same thing for gay women. Some of them choose to get pregnant through having a surrogate, but some of them choose not to. They don't ever get pregnant, and they're still women. And you could argue, well, they have the ability to, but why does that matter? Why is the ability to impregnate or the ability to become pregnant so freaking important? When, as a whole, the need to reproduce is so much less than it has ever been in the history of our species. And even if you want to say that it is important, why is it so important that it has to overwrite every other category of what makes a person who they are? And the simple fact of the matter is that's the only thing that our social construct of biological sex accurately refers to from a scientific perspective. And even then, it's not perfect. So why are people using this? Well, the answer to that is that it's easy. It's a great way to simplify the issue, to reduce the issue, and ultimately to not have to grant trans people full membership in the sex that they're telling you they are. The simple fact of the matter is that if I say that I'm biologically female, that's just as valid as you saying I'm not. In fact, it's more valid because I'm talking about me and you're not talking about you. They're social constructs, this idea of what a biological male is. There is no absolute scientific male. The idea of male is something that we invented, and that with the advent of trans people is being deconstructed. Now, a lot of people are scared of that. Okay, you're scared. It's scary. It's complicated. We're going into a new frontier where gender doesn't mean what it used to, and neither does sex. I get it. It's frightening. It messes a lot of things up. But you have to deal with it. You have to roll with it. You have to go with it. You can't fight it by claiming some kind of scientific authority when what you're actually using is arbitrary socially constructed labels. I want to provide you with a thought experiment to sort of help see what I'm talking about here. Think about protons and electrons. Scientists decided to call protons positive and to call electrons negative. Now, the thing that's important to understand is that this classification is not meant to give protons any sort of socially constructed qualities of positivity. Protons are not happy. Protons do not have a bright outlook on life. Protons are not positive in the sense that we define positivity, but we call them positive for convenience because it's a social construct. Same thing with electrons being negative. They're not pessimists, they're just particles that we call negative. We call them positive and negative because they have an opposite effect on each other. They cancel each other out. We could have called them anything. Up and down, left and right, you name it. Hot and cold. These are all things we could have, we just for whatever reason didn't. It was completely arbitrary. But now we have all of these social values attached to those arbitrary words that come from completely other dimensions of reality. But how little sense would it make if we had a society of protons and electrons and people tried to say, you know what, electron, I don't want to hang out with you because you're negative and I don't like negative people. Like, that's bizarre. It doesn't make any sense. It's completely ridiculous because electrons aren't actually negative. We just call them negative. It's arbitrary. They don't actually have any of the qualities of negativity just because they're electrons and we call them negative. And in exactly the same way, just because we call a certain collection of traits, like being able to impregnate, biologically male, does not mean that a person who has those traits is male. It doesn't. It just doesn't. That being said, people are trying to say that it does. They're trying to use biologically male to suggest that there is something actually masculine about trans women, or biologically female to say that there is something actually feminine about trans men, or biologically male or female for people who are non-binary. And you just can't do it. It's not right. It doesn't make sense. It's completely arbitrary, and most importantly, it's meaningless, except in the sense of reproduction. And even in that sense, it's not really 100% accurate, and it's not nearly as relevant as it used to be. The simple fact of the matter is that most people are using this language because it's simple, and because it provides a pseudoscientific justification for barring access to membership for trans people. And that's not really fair. If you're gonna claim scientific basis for your decisions, you might want to use actual science and not the social constructs on top of science. Thanks for listening, guys. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe down below. And take care. Have a great day. Bye.